With the latest on this story, we go live now to France 24's Molana-Allen in Beirut. Layla, you have been at these protests all day. What's the atmosphere been like, and has there been any confrontations?
Today has been markedly different. We've had small amounts of confrontation over the last few days, but today things really started to unravel a little bit with these peaceful protests. And we did expect that because, of course, of Hassan Nasrallah's speech, which is always heavily watched by his supporters and by the rest of the country. In just a half an hour before the speech, in this area in downtown Beirut, a large group of Hezbollah supporters came along and started a fight against the protesters here. They were trying to tear down the tents that have been set up. They were throwing chairs and stones. People had to be dragged apart, and quite a few injuries. And you had amazing scenes of security forces fighting against these Hezbollah supporters who are supposedly defending the government against the protesters' criticisms. The security forces fighting these Hezbollah supporters with batons, and these Hezbollah supporters threatening them and threatening to tear back at them. So eventually they did manage to separate them on that side. And then on the other side of the square, Riyad al-Solah, just on my left, when the speech started happening, there were several cars that came down from Hezbollah supporters with huge speakers that were playing the speech. And on the other side, you had protesters blasting out Arabic rap music, trying to drown out the speech. Riot police locked down the entire square. No one could go in or out. And just towards the end of the speech, suddenly small groups of young Hezbollah men started running very fast, trying to jump out of the square, riot police chasing behind them and trying to cut them off. So that was during the speech. And then afterwards, here in Beirut, things did calm down a bit. The riot police managed to move most of those Hezbollah protesters away, and they went outside of the square. In Dahia, which is a suburb and a Hezbollah stronghold, there was a huge rally in favor of Nasrallah. And in the south, in other Hezbollah strongholds, which are Nabatieh and Sur, among others, then gangs, cavalcades of Hezbollah supporters on motorcycles went around with flags, intimidating protesters protesting against the government. And just behind me here, now they're doing shout-outs on the microphone to those different towns to try and encourage the supporters there. As I say, most of the protesters, the Hezbollah supporters in downtown Beirut were cleared out after that speech, but until just about half an hour ago, they were still here trying to start fights with protesters, according to the protesters here. And Nasrallah said in his speech, he said, none of the Hezbollah supporters are creating problems, but if they were, I asked them to stop and I asked them to leave the protest. That's not their role. The ones down here wouldn't, and eventually an actual Hezbollah official came into the square, tried to remove them, but the strength of the feeling here is that when a protester shouted at him, Killon yani Killon, which means all of them means all of them, which includes Nasrallah, the Hezbollah official slapped him and went completely against Nasrallah's orders. So a lot of action here today and descending into quite a lot of violent clashes.
Molana-Allen in Beirut, thank you so much for your reporting all day on this story.